So we want to talk about user journeys, for us in particular, about the user journey SLI stuff um, that we've been talking about. And one thing that came to our attention is that we might not be talking about exactly the same thing. So I've written down a bit of a glossary on the top of the agenda that's like subject to change. But I think the biggest kind of mismatch that we might be encountering is the name user journey. Because for us, that's a really short thing, as in create an issue, create an epic, push changes, stuff like that. But from what I've heard of a product, that could be something more elaborate where user registers, creates a project, creates a first issue, that kind of thing. Um, so I think we need to either align or we can change or somebody can change the wording that they use. Um, yeah. We started off with a different name. So we're kind of like in infrastructure, I think we're flux on the on what that name should be. But we did get buy-in for the name user journey. So yeah, that's where we're sitting on for the first point in our agenda. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I brought this up in a meeting we had earlier today in infrastructure leadership, and I'll just repeat it here to start the thing. I think that we will like have a constant battle if we choose to use the same names. And ironically, the thing that comes to mind is SLOs versus SLAs and how everyone continually gets it wrong all the time. In fact, we discovered that our legal agreement with our customers actually uses the word SLOs when it meant SLAs. And I suspect that if we use the same terminology and then we have this thing where every time somebody uses it, we correct them, like we do with SLOs and SLAs as an industry, it just doesn't make any sense. I think we should just kind of nip that in the bud and just decide that we have to have different names for these things because they are different. The one is a many to the other, and we shouldn't have something that's a one to many having the same name. It's like cars and
So
wheels.
so I think the name user journey, the thing that we called it user journey to get easier buy-in at the time. But the industry is more talking when they talk about user journeys, they talk more about the thing that the Lauren was describing in the Epic, um, like the longer funnel things and to see conversion rates and all of that. So I think we should probably change the name then.
I think that's fine. And it helped us get buy-in. So that's good. And we're always going to struggle with something that is so abstract, right? I can journey over there to get some spare batteries, or I can journey to Vegas at Summit for a week and see all of you. And it's the same abstract term.
Yeah,
So
and
what
I
name?
think,
Oh, go ahead.
oh yeah, I just wanted to emphasize and hi, those I feel like I've like been on Slack and issues with you all, but never met in person somehow, maybe once or twice at Summit. But I think it's important to still like emphasize that they're connected. Like I don't want us to say like, oh, they're not the same thing. I think we should actually intentionally say like this is what they each are called, this is what they each are for, and this is where they come together. Because this was also brought up in the earlier meeting, but just to repeat here, they are related even though they're different things, right? And I think it's important that we're looking at both at the same time. That's actually really cool that we're doing that. Once we can sort out the naming, I think we'll be in a
It's the
really good
one to
spot.
it's the one to many, right? So it's like
Right. Yeah.
chapters to a book. And if they were
Hmm.
both called book, it would be very confusing. They're
Right.
intimately connected, but
Right.
we call them different
Yeah.
things so that it's
Yeah.
understandable.
Yeah.
Do we have a series somewhere in that concept then of books?
I mean, we can we can do a lot with that metaphor, I think. But
I
um
had a good conversation with Bob and Hercules on this on Friday, and we kind of went back to the beginnings of like what we're trying to achieve from a, I guess purely within observability, but maybe wider infrastructure as well, and then what we thought maybe product or user experience are trying to achieve as well. And I think there's been a lot of talk around user journeys in engineering recently. I think it was quite a popular topic at the CTO offsite a couple of weeks ago. And I think and Sam, I know you and I have had conversations as well about trying to better capture like user sentiment around availability, like when part of the system is up or part of the system is down. Um, Andrew's done some really good work as well, and I don't know if that issue is shared in the agenda, Andrew, which goes into detail of all of the SLA stuff that he was talking about earlier. Looking at competitors, similar organizations. Yeah, jump in, Andrew.
I just on that, I think there are overlaps, but I do think it's really important with the SLA that like to the point about we define it in English first, and we shouldn't build it on top of our technology stack. We should build it on top of like a nice, clear description of user experience. And then if we behind the scenes build it on that stack, that's fine. But we shouldn't and this is only for the SLA discussion. I think we should just try and keep a clean slate there. I think all of us at the back of our minds are thinking we can probably use some of the information from experiences to feed into that, but I don't think it should lead that conversation. So it's kind of difficult because I think we're all there, but I also don't want to taint it too much with that. If that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
completely
absolutely agree with that. And I think I think that's where it's important to distinguish, and like where leadership are involved as well, and like Sabrina and others. Like when they were using a term user journeys, were they thinking more about how users interact with our system and where they like fall out of the funnel and how to get them to follow through with actions, or were they thinking more about understanding sort of the reliability and availability of our system?
I was thinking that I would really like to ask you that. I don't actually know. I mean, on the one hand, I think that, it is probably more widely understood to be, the product version of what we're talking about. And so just from a industry terminology point of view, maybe she's probably talking about that. But I think we've spoken a little bit about what we're planning on doing at a fairly high level, and I never got the impression that she was on a different tack. So I really don't know sort of where she stands on this, but I was thinking it would be really worthwhile. No, she was very instrumental in rolling out user journeys as part of their monitoring for Gmail. And so I'm kind of curious to know a little bit more about the background on that and what she's expecting from this.
Yeah, maybe that's a good place to get input, because say something that I learned about from Andrew's write-up was that lots of SLAs have the concept of a covered experience, or a limited covered experience in a concept of SLAs. And it's basically just simple but core critical kind of interactions in the system that the SLA is tied to. So creating an issue, creating an MR, kind of like a handful of topics. And we felt that on the conversation I had with Hercules and Bob, that term covered experience, because it seems to be a bit of an industry standard already, that's something we talk about from a technical observability point of view. So we're going to build some SLAs, sorry, Andrew, around covered experiences. And then I guess the question is like, if we did that, and it seems like a good place to start as a first iteration anyway. As you said, Lauren, I think it might then be like an opportunity beyond that to think about, well, what can we take from that to like help the sort of wider user journey topic later on?
Yeah. And I think I want to go back and respond, I think, to what you were saying, Andrew, about like, what are we talking about when we talk about user journeys at the GitLab level? I know in the sales kickoff, they actually said yet another related but slightly different term, customer journey. And so I do wonder if that's its own thing of like, when are those used interchangeably? But I think what would be great is once we figure out what we're going to call these things and if they fit together, to like present that back at the leadership level, whatever that looks like, and say, these are what we're calling these are how they fit together. At at least within, infrastructure platforms, because I think we need it, right? That like we can't continue on without disambiguating these things, but also I think at the product and cross-functional level, we need these like higher level journeys, and at the observability, we need the level that you all have been working with. And so I think I love the idea of coming back once we've got everything solidified and saying like, is this what is in your brain or something else?
So building on that, I think there's two other things. The one is that is particularly the DevX team, they talk a lot about critical user journeys, and it's not 100% clear if it's exactly the same thing as what we're talking about, but that's something else we should bring into the fold when we have a clear idea.
Is there an issue or a page or anything about that?
There's a lot, they call them CUJs, and I can try and find, there was a lot of talk about it at the CTO summit. So, they want to make sure that the critical user, in many ways, we kind of, the proposal that we've kind of taken for what we're doing, we saying will meet what they need. But it's still, I think there's still a terminology difference there, and it's not 100% clear to me that what we're talking about is exactly what they're talking about. I think it is, but like I have never had any confirmation like that's absolutely what it is. But that's also because we're kind of forming it at the moment.
I think we can collaborate on that, and we can make it the same thing. Like, because what we're building is new, what they're building is new, and it's not I think we can align there more easily. And by using a term that's not already taken by the industry somewhere else. Like
I was about to say that I'm curious also to see where our path will cross, because if we are gonna have like multiple efforts, eventually everybody will need something that everybody is working on their own thing, and it could be just one thing collaborating where we are collaborating together. Otherwise, we're gonna have like multiple solutions for the same thing for a specific one.
I do think and this is purely from an engineering point of view of actually like what we deliver first. If we deliver the thing that we've been speaking about, that is kind of a basis for the higher level user journeys, right? So we kind of have to do that first, and that will give us what we need for developer experience. It'll help to align them. We'll get the stuff that we need, and then the product side of kind of the stepping stones between each of those things, and the like I still think of it as a funnel. I don't know if that is exactly in line with what you're thinking, Lauren, but like kind of like you kind of go down through the funnel, and as you go, you users, some of them do the thing that you want them to do and some don't, and that's kind of how the funnel gets smaller and smaller. But we have to build what we're building here anyway as the foundation of that. And so don't think we have to worry too much about like much beyond that, because we're pretty sure that this is the first step.
The only thing where like the touch point is the thing that they called the registry. So up to now we've been calling it the user journey registry.
Yeah.
So I think that's the only thing that we need to little bit align of, like where are we going to store that kind of stuff. That's like the technical thing that we need to align on. But what's in it, we will just do what's needed for us, and then make sure that it's expandable.
So one option is that we have it as the experience registry, and it has a series of events, right? Whatever we want, experiences, whatever we want to call them. And then at a higher stage, the user journey registry is kind of like, referencing that and saying, well, you go from this step to this step to this step to this step, and that references.
Yes, that sounds really nice.
That's one option.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. So then the user journey, so we'll call it the experience registry. That's the thing that we're working on for now. Do we agree on that?
Covered experience, because then
I was gonna I know, so this meeting is nearly all about terminology, so I think we're all okay in this meeting to be kind of pernickety about
yes.
and then we can kind of say, then it's done, we've made those decisions. But I do feel that, so when like if you look in those SLAs, when people are talking about the experiences, there's like lots of different experiences when you're using a product, but only certain of them are
Are
covered
covered
by the
by the
SLA.
SLA.
That's the
Exactly.
covered experiences. And so just while we got our pernickety hats on, it feels to me that covered is a
Yes.
subset of experiences, and those are the ones that count towards the SLA, which is a subset of
Yes.
all of the experiences.
But that's why I also wanted to not use covered experience, because covered experience is the thing that is already used in some of the other wording, like that Andrew
Yeah.
has seen. So let's cut off the covered. If we
Yeah.
decide that we're not going to use the experience directly for the SLA, no harm done.
Yeah.
If it is, then it's going to be nice, and those are going to be the covered ones. But like,
Yeah.
Is the Andrew, is the definition in the SLA, it's not a limited covered experience, and is that not what defines what
So
I still
I
like
kind
just
of
being
in my
pernickety,
mind
but
the limited and the covered are together, but I mean that's up for
okay.
debate. Like, and this is the meeting to have this debate, right? But
If you
but
feel so, I guess if you feel that there's too close an interaction between them, I get
yeah.
it. I think that's fine. But I think when Bob and I and Hercules spoke last week, that was the difference between limited, which is what's in
yeah,
the SLA, and then you just have a list of covered experiences.
yeah. So experiences are covered when there is this thing around it that we're building. So it goes into metrics and we have alerts for it. Then it's covered. And then
Exactly. It's a strong psychological draw, isn't it, for the, you know, development engineers, potentially, or product people to say, yeah, well, your experiences aren't covered. What do you mean they're not covered? How do we cover them? Well,
No, but the sort of in my mind, like if you buy a car and you drive it on a terrible road and everything falls off, it's not covered by the warranty. And in the same way, I think of the SLA, you know, there's things that are covered by the warranty of the SLA and then other things that aren't. But that's just, I know
it can be internal covered experiences though, right? Like you know what your failage limits are on your car, but you set your warranty at a really intentional position with your external communications.
I mean, I like the thing I like about covered experience is that it's like kind of a phrase you don't see anywhere else, where like experience is still something that you sort of, it can be used as quite a generic term, where covered experience is like you don't use that in general English, right? So it's kind of like it's a good name for something. But
I agree that I love the specificity of it. Also, just two more things to throw into the mix that will feel similar, even though they are not. We also have in product analytics instrumentation, which is potentially looking at funnels or health of people as they move through these things. So I think it's important to disambiguate from that. I think at a technical level, they are very different. At an abstract level, people may lump them together. And so just echoing what you all have said, the more specific we can be about this, the better. We also, within product design, have something called, I believe its proper name is a user experience scorecard for specific parts of I know they're everywhere. It's great that the optimistic side is we all want to measure and make this better. So we've all done it. I think, and I included actually, Andrew, and I'll make this deck more helpful. I pulled together like just examples of these things that I've experienced. And I think actually the user experience scorecard is sort of aligned in a way with potentially covered experiences, if that's where we land, because it is very tactically looking at there's 5 steps required to create an issue or whatever it is. What are those? It edges into the user journey territory, but it's much more granular. I'll post a link of that in here as well. So I think I'm in support of covered experiences because again, highly specific, very different from anything else. Critical user journeys worries me slightly in terms of disambiguity, but that's a different problem.
What do we think about adding the internal specifier that Sam mentioned to make sure that it's far away from covered experiences used in SLAs later, potentially, maybe?
I don't know. I'm not sure there's much danger there. We can say internally we have these covered experiences that we really care about. A critical user journey, or whatever that ends up being, has to be a covered experiences because those are critical for our users. But we can have a limited number of them that show up in our SLA and our, legalese, that, back to Andrew's point, and, great issue write-up, starting with that when we get to the SLA definition.
That's the thing, because I would argue that this shared language is actually can be a good thing, but we need to start from the other end, right? We can't start from the internal language and then try to legalize it.
Yeah, as long as it's got limited on it. Yeah. We're sort of running a little bit out of time, and there's something else that's kind of on my mind, and it worries me a little bit, and that is that politically, or sort of there's a lot of selling that's been done on engineering delivering user journeys, and I think that at the very least we have to consider the fact that now, to some people on the outside, they're saying, oh, they're not delivering user journeys anymore. They've gone with this lesser covered experience, and I think we have to sell it well to make sure that it's clear that the one is part of the greater thing.
Yeah, I think we need to make sure that we explain how this covered journey fits into the user journey.
Very much, we mustn't
covered experience. Yes,
very much explain it as a single kind of thing. Yeah, just wanted to get that in as well.
Yeah, I think it's a good call. I think what feedback we get from leadership will be interesting. If anyone's interested, I've linked through to a slide deck, which is actually from Google. It was shared with us by Andras over on Data Stores last week. Actually, in there they talk about user journeys quite a bit. And one of the things they said was to do user journeys, we had to add, I think, like client-side telemetry. Which to me implies that their thinking around user journey is very much right about that end to end, what the user sees, how long it takes, and all of that kind of stuff. So, to the point, I wouldn't be surprised if that was aligned with Sabrina's view. And then, yeah, you're right, Andrew. It's then about expectation management.
Yeah. Where is that link?
The bottom, number 5 in the agenda.
Okay, sorry, I was looking for like a blue underline thing. Sorry, it's late.
I'll just one quick plug. This is again why I put that section in that epic, and we'll make more artifacts from that. But I do think we should start from the very beginning, at least within infrastructure platforms, of saying like, and I think actually be really good input for the PMs who haven't seen this yet, but will soon throughout the rest of infrastructure platforms, to say like, yes, we've thought critically about this. So I would love. I can take another pass at it based on this conversation, obviously, because I wrote that up last week, but would very much love feedback there, so we can start, again, even at the very foundation of this workshop and whatever we produce out of it, saying like, this, we've thought about this and this is how we see them. Hopefully that will help with you as well, Andrew, communicating this back out.
Yeah, I think we all like very aligned. It's just like, this is purely a terminology problem, which is like, I think a good problem to have.
Oh yeah, like I said, I'd much rather have too many people thinking about good experiences for our users than not enough.
Yeah.
Just thinking about ways to communicate out and up.
I think
we
it
can figure out
definitely
the
will help.
marketing.
Yeah, I think it will definitely help if we already we can maybe update the section where it currently mentions user journeys as SLIs to the covered experiences, and then that starts, and then it comprises of covered experiences. Cool. So do we call that the conclusion then? We go with covered experiences from here on out?
I think so. Super uncontroversial, and the marketing will just be repetition at the all hands, at the engineering all hands, repetition about, hey, these are covered experiences, this is how they're going to roll out, and then people will get it eventually.
I've added the Claude definitions at the end of the agenda as well, by the way, if anyone interested, which I think looks pretty spot on to me.
Yeah, what is it? Yes, covered experience. Yeah. Yeah. And awesome, that's great. And then in that same thing, what you were saying, Sam, it's like, this is a covered experience, and this is how it ties in with the user journey, and this is where we're going as a company.
That brings us slightly to the next point on the agenda. I don't know if we still have enough time, but that's the multi-action thing of a covered experience. because Andrew, you were reluctant on adding multiple actions. When I talk about multiple actions, that it goes from like having the experience be multiple actions that a user need to take to complete it. Being creating an issue, you need to be able to get to the form.
I would rather see that from a user. I would rather see that like implemented as a user journey and keep the covered experiences simpler. I think Lauren's nodding her head in agreement.
Yeah.
Agree.
So why don't like why do we need to go? Because what it feels like to me, then what we want to do is the thing that we can already do with application SLI is just get rid of the service part.
Although that's only half of them, because the other half are things that transverse multiple services. Well,
yeah, okay, so that's the thing that we still need to add, but that's the format is the same. You can we can change the way the metrics
effectively at the
comes
end of the
out.
day it'll come out as an application SLI.
And then we don't need to go to developers and tell them put your thing in the covered experience. We can just add the criticalities where they need to be.
Do we not want to rebrand them as we don't want to say because there are lots of SLIs that are not covered experiences at the moment, right?
Yeah, we need to do some rebranding. Yeah. We need to do a lot of work for them, like getting the metrics to work. We need to move the
like especially the very broad ones, right? So like the ones that are like all of Rails requests, like, you know, at the moment we have SLIs, which are kind of like everything that goes into the web service in Rails goes into one bucket for one SLI. That's never going to translate into a user experience because it's a terrible user experience.
The thing is, you only need to map certain things like issues controller.create into a thing that that's a user journey. And I don't really feel like there's much added value in asking engineering to go through all of their controllers again and see what needs to be a covered experience, and then adding the whatever.
The value
around
is
it.
just
the product. Go
doing
ahead,
it right. That presence of, I think there's value in just looking through all of that stuff again and applying this lens to it, even if it's not making changes, right?
I mean, but I think the what I'm trying to get at is like I don't want to introduce new code to be able to do that, because they could just say this identifier issues controller #create. That's the identifier that we currently use. That's the covered experience, and we don't need to have them go in and define a new thing around that, because I think most of our things are going to be just that.
There is, there's more thinking. Like that's definitely a starting point. Firstly, I think that we must get product to kind of drive what those experiences are. So they'll decide those, and then we can translate those. And as you say, most of them are probably just like request, post to create issues.
So a request can be that, a sidekick job can never be that. That's like we need more from a sidekick job. Like that's not a covered experience. That's just an implementation, technical implementation. Okay, so we're going to stick with single actions, and we'll have a think again on how we implement that with relation to the application SLIs, and because I don't think that I want to avoid developers having to go in and writing a piece of code around a controller again to emit an event. Like that seems like something that's done. We've done that before.
Together a proposal, and then that'll give I don't really have a super clear understanding of where you're going with it. I think I do, but I think if you put that in a doc, or put it in the blueprint.
And in the blueprint, it's going to go in the blueprint. That's a better way to have a discussion, but I don't know where it's going yet. I just don't want it to go.
There's another part of it which is probably too deep down to really discuss now, but I think it might help address a lot of the concerns that people have, and actually that I have as well. And that's that the way we've done it at the moment, if HA proxy dies or the whole web service dies, requests don't go through and they're not measured as part of this whole thing, and therefore there's no downside. From the customer's point of view, it's 100% SLA, which is a terrible experience because it's not 100% SLA. And this doesn't solve any of that. And so
we can move it closer though.
So I think one of the things we might want to do is from the client is actually say we're starting the journey here, but we don't, all that happens is that it sets a header on the request. And when that hits Cloudflare, it's effectively starting the user journey there. So we have Cloudflare in the loop because Cloudflare is pretty close to the customer, right? And we can include that in the timings. Cloudflare doesn't need to know a lot about the journeys, but it gets the header from the client saying that this customer is trying to create an issue now. Are they going to get through? And then in that case, when those things fail, because GitLab's down and it's returning a 500, it counts towards their SLA. I don't know. This is a bit of a nerd snap in this conversation, but it's also something that I've been thinking about a bit. We can talk about this in a separate discussion, maybe.
You meant covered experience there, starting at CloudWatch, yeah?
Yes.
This is going to take some adjusting.
I'm always here for being specific about language. So
good. No, that's all we need. Thank you.
So the last thing is talk through the epic. Lauren, if you still have time.
Yeah, I have time. I know it's much more reasonable in my day than for you all. So happy to walk through it, or I can record something and you can catch up later, whatever works for you all.
I have a bit more time if you want.
Yeah, I'm good for 10 minutes.
Okay. I was going to say, nobody's running away fast enough, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so bring it over here. So this, again, was written in the context of Fabian is standing up this effort to do within infrastructure platforms, a user journey workshop. This is less focused, and this is among the PMs who will be the participant, or the key participants, as I understand it, but obviously with support from engineering counterparts. This is also less about what is a user journey, because I think, it's a common tool we've all used, and more how are we, and that's why I've gone through how are we defining them? I think that there's still probably a little bit that we should true up as a PM group, because there's a million different things that get called user journeys. Thanks for surfacing this article last week, Sam. I then went down a little bit of a rabbit hole with their blogs. They break it apart even further, which is, yeah. So I think we'll have to, as a product team, decide what are we going to include here. I think this is something I am very opinionated on, is that it will include interactions with an application that we own or an application somebody else owns, but also entirely manual things that happen in the rest of GitLab. And I think that's where this even gets pulled further apart from a covered experience or something like a funnel that analytics might fully instrument, because we're looking across a much broader swath.
Just to help with my understanding, Lauren, would we instrument those Zendesk support tickets, for instance, or would that just be a virtual event, or would we actually know that a customer has sent a Zendesk ticket?
That's the fun.
Yeah,
that's the fun thing, is we don't necessarily know, right? Because that's not a system. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's a SaaS that we just use, right? So
I mean, we can probably do something, but
yeah, so that's in past lives. That's where you get into okay, well, this is critical to track, because this is one of the metrics by which we're going to tell, is this entire journey healthy or not? So therefore it needs to get exported here in Snowflake and whatever. So yes,
in a nice world where we have a really mature data mesh, it would be great.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think
so
at this
we
level,
are instrumenting those in the ideal path.
Yeah. Exactly. But at the place where we're at, I think it's equal. I think it's just an inventory of do these things happen in these other places still needs to be done before we get to how might we pull that data in, and is it a metric we want to track? Why do we need this? Why is it important to do now? I think I'm not going to go through this word for word, but this is kind of the key thing. to me is we just cover so much ground in this group that we can't really be successful at creating end-to-end experiences without this type of view of the user journey. Like I think that's why maybe the UX scorecard has been so useful for other groups is they've been a little more focused on like this specific area, and they have some general ideas about what happens upstream and downstream. And you could argue that this is beneficial everywhere, but I think especially within infrastructure platforms, we have to have something like this, or we're going to keep having blind spots about what we even, we won't know what we don't know. In terms of why we're doing it now, I tied this in, I think, to our FY26 investment theme, which is in product of delivering a world-class enterprise experience. You just, again, like you can't really do this. And I think the primary example in my world is like migrations and onboarding. You can very clearly see, and customers can clearly see where there's like breakpoints between teams. And that obviously is not an enterprise grade experience. And then I think too, just to like go to echo what you said about Zendesk, Andrew, like we might not necessarily even know like what is all the like 10-finger APIs that are out there, the band-aids we've stuck on things to try and fix these things. And like maybe we just need to productize and automate more that we haven't really looked at before. So that's another goal, is some discovery through doing these. We've talked about this enough. I'll revise it. I tried to make it very clear that this is under construction, this section. And then this is just how we're going to go about doing this, tactically. I am really curious to see what other people have, like, because again, these are like common things we all sort of do to get by, I think, in a lot of ways. And then, we'll go from there to figure out what we want these to mean within infrastructure platform, or what the artifacts will be specifically.
And do you think that this is like the start of a journey to kind of sell this to a wider product group as well? Like,
I would love to do that because, like I said, I think I've run into this a couple of times in my kind of limited experience of like, I try and ask a question of like, okay, well, what brings somebody to this point, or what are they going to do next? And sometimes like people have an idea, it's not that they've never thought about it, but it's never been documented, and it's never been like, I think also there's like an important cross-functional alignment use for these user journeys. Meaning like going to a CSM, customer success manager, and saying like, is this what you do with your customer when they say they want to use blah? And maybe they have it documented, maybe they don't. So I do think this should go beyond here, but I think how the way Fabian has framed it when we've talked about it is we can't really wait. Again, why do we need to do this now? But I know he has talked to, I think this was shared in the earlier meeting as well. He's talked to Angela Pesta, the VP of user experience. So they're aware. And yeah, this may end up getting built on and maybe even adapted for other groups, stages, sections. Yeah.
I think if we can show and demo, like model how to turn that high level into a covered experience, though,
that would
the
be
better
so
we can do
cool.
that.
Yeah, I would love, like, that's why, just kind of getting into the tactical steps, like I think Fabian proposed like the top 3. We absolutely have to do this. And, even if we can only do it with one in the scope of this workshop, and we have to do the rest later, but we've got them prioritized. And also in terms of sort of selling this back, I know we can't wait for it to be done to start the socializing back up the chain, but this, I think, is where we can show like this is actually powerful in bringing teams together, is when we do it this way, and it's not just one team doing this or another team doing it.
I think one of the things that I still need to understand a little bit better is like a lot of the work that we in platforms are going to be doing for this is actually going to be targeting like stage groups in the development stage.
Yeah.
And their requirements are going to be like, I think, like for Switchboard, a lot of the stuff is quite complicated because it's, very much like across organizations, it's across GitLab and other companies and like Amazon to some degree. And, there's a bit of that, where I would imagine with a lot of the like stage, like clan, it's like create the issue, open the issue, whatever, close the issue, whatever that is. It's sort of more internal. And a lot of the initial covered experiences that we're going to build are going to kind of apply very well to those without us having to integrate in with, Zendesk or anything like that. And so we're just going to have to figure out like how we can kind of also bring those product managers along on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's why Fabian's been socializing this outside,
Yeah.
kind of our area, because what seems really powerful to me about the covered experiences, I mean, obviously measuring it and knowing and pulling that into SLAs, hopefully I'm saying the right 3 letters there, is super powerful. And I love how customer centric it is, but also to feed these back to the teams that own these things.
Yeah.
And say like, hey, we've identified like this place in the user journey where we think customer sentiment is really, or even internal sentiment is really poor. Here's the covered experience. Here's what this looks like. Like some of it is obviously not going to have a technical solution, but maybe some of it does, right? So I think that we absolutely do need to get this feeding back into those groups as well. And I think too, in an ideal world, I would love to know like their high level user journey, like what does it mean to get to the point where you need to create an issue, not to get like to woo about it, but like that is the power of some of these, is just knowing where users are coming from, what other things they're looking at, so you can see like, did we even build the right thing? And are we even?
I know we're quite over time now, but like the other thing that just kind of springs to mind from my limited previous experience with funnels and Mixpanel and Storyful and those products is, if your application is emitting the events nicely, which are in our case the events are the covered user experiences, and you're using a decent piece of software like Mixpanel, you can change those. You don't have to have the user journeys in YAML and like merge requests. You can kind of change them pretty quickly in the product, and you can say, go from, show me the funnel from this event to this event to this event.
Right.
Oh no, let's try it the other way around. And it's much more dynamic than like storing it in a merge request. But if you have to have the events in the right format in order to do that,
Right.
and so what we're building, we need to do anyway. Not that I'm going to use Mixpanel because I don't think we've got that much money, but.
And I think our internal analytics team is doing that. And I've just, unfortunately, it's been a side hobby to get Switchboard instrumented, so I'm not fully aware of all the ways that we can do that type of thing here. But yeah, I'm also used to that as well, like being able to see a user going through, in a tool like Full Story or something. And I understand why we can't do some of those same things here, but I think I love to see some momentum happening in all these different groups around like, okay, what do we have and what are we actually learning from it and what do we need to apply on top of that? That'll be really powerful as well when we get all these pieces put together.
Awesome.
And Andrew, I had raised a question in the All Hands channel about whether it's premature or useful to present on this topic at All Hands. I'm from this conversation, and you all correct me if I'm wrong here, I do feel like it would be good to at least introduce like the terminology.
That's what my take is especially now that we've decided on the terminology a bit more.
Yeah, because as soon as we can start saying the correct thing from now on, so the more we communicate that, the better.
Repetition.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Okay. I'll raise that.
Lauren, are you going to also include, there's kind of like, I know, and this is much more like engineering orientated side of it, but the diagram of like the product managers creating what we'll now rename as the covered experiences, and then the developers implementing it, and then DevX, checking that it's being tested, and then us using it for SLIs. Are you going to kind of include any of that flow in your topic, or are you going to keep it quite high level and mostly focus on it from the product perspective?
in the user journey workshop, it'll be pretty focused from the product perspective, but I love that meta journey that you just laid out there. And I think we should talk about, that's probably the important thing to talk about in infrastructure all
to engineers, because it'll tie back into like what people are doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I could certainly give a preview of like, here's what I mean when I say user journey, but I think, yeah, in terms of tactically, what should we say at this point?
Yeah, and
maybe you and I can collaborate there.
Achilles's blueprint as well. That's not finished yet, but it's ongoing.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll take the action then to like figure out what we want to do in all hands. I don't need to be the one to present it, but I do think somebody should speak about it. Maybe I'm volunteering you, Andrew. I don't know, but both of us.
No, I think the general consensus is everyone's bored of hearing me in all hands, at least for this. So I think, firstly, it would be really good if you did it. But secondly, if you don't want to do it, then we can find someone else and volunteer.
No, I don't mind. I just don't want to represent anybody's work.
No, I think I think, and also it'll be like a good
I'm happy to help prepare for that, or
cool. Like, yeah.
Time zones and so on. Like, feel free to ping me and we'll work something out.
Async. Yeah, for sure. Also, I will need someone to present in just tactically. I'm not very good at the 6 a.m. my time meetings, so. But anyway, we can figure that all out. I think
what happened for me was that it was recorded, and that was we just.
Oh, that's right.
Which one's first for you? Is it you just record if it's first in the early time zone, then just record it.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good call out. Yeah. Okay. I'll try not to get deathly ill at this next all hands. It's unfortunate. Still coughing from the last one.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, cool. This was a really great call.
My cold from Amsterdam.
I feel like I'm just gonna have a cough forever. Like I think I just live here now. It's fine. It's really great here. We're having like measles outbreaks to be walking around coughing. So. North American problems.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks all. Bye.